A recent New York Times expose offered a surprisingly sober look at Planned Parenthood, highlighting how the number of patients, the clinics, and the resources have been declining in recent years. However, abortions have not. Now, some may be inclined to view the piece as the New York Times' way of subtly arguing for more funding for Planned Parenthood. But the final analysis of Planned Parenthood's crisis is not about money, as my next guest, Chuck Donovan, will share. Chuck is the former president of Charlotte Lozier Institute. He served at several pro-life organizations, including Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, the National Right to Life Committee, and the Family Research Council. He also served in the Reagan White House. Chuck, welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Tony. Good to see you.
Now, you wrote a piece in response to this expose that was in the New York Times. And, of course, going back a few years, you pretty much wrote the book on Planned Parenthood. This is not a new topic to you. You've been tracking it for years. But it appears that the veneer is coming off, and even the left is starting to point to some of the problems.
Well, Tony, if the New York Times feels compelled to write a story that, as I point out in my piece, could have been written by a right to life activist group, we've reached a new day. They call it Planned Parenthood in Crisis. Botched abortions and tired staff is a subtitle for it. And it's extraordinary. You read it through. 50% staff turnover across the country. Conditions that are not even remotely clean in the clinics. Medical tests being conducted or procedures being conducted by people with an hour's training. Staff so poorly paid, they're going off and have to get Medicaid and food stamps. And they think that this is okay. What I found most fascinating, though, is this is a structural problem. It's not new. What's new is the New York Times noticing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not new. I know when I authored and passed the first Abortion Clinic Regulation Act in Louisiana, one of the first in the nation 25 years ago, it was based upon actually work that a young attorney had done, who now happens to be the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. And we had undercover pictures of the unsanitary conditions in the abortion clinic, and all the things really kind of outlined in the New York Times piece. The difference is the New York Times is talking about it. What's going on here? Why is the left now even willing to admit these issues?
Well, that will require some explanation, but you know, they seem to suggest in the article, although a lot of left-wingers have criticized this piece for being written, that Planned Parenthood has money issues, but that doesn't add up. They have 43% increased revenue since 2010. And keep in mind, a good portion of the time was under conservative administrations. They have a way of getting more money no matter what happens. And at the same time, Tony, their client base has been sharply declining, except, as you have pointed out, in the one area which they are totally dedicated to, which is abortion.
Now, they're also
yeah, go ahead.
Well, they're shifting now to a lot of the abortion pill. They're also shifting to hormone treatments, puberty blockers for youth. So their overhead is actually coming down. You know, they're having revenue in the neighborhood of $1 billion a year, and as a nonprofit, they've been having a profit every year. Now, they're not like the Southern Poverty Law Center sitting on tens of millions of dollars, actually billions of dollars offshore, but they have a lot of money.
Oh, well, they have $2.5 billion in net assets. Now, you mentioned the pro-life groups I worked at. Net asset is not a phrase even employed at those places. Planned Parenthood can afford things, but what they spend it on is political activism. And the article does kind of point that out. And they also pay enormous salaries to their national figures, but not so much for the clinic staff. And I'm beginning to wonder if one of the reasons for this is the evolution of abortion. Abortion has tossed away the veneer that it's medical care. It is a pill sent in the mail. And, you know, we've got the recent case in your state, Louisiana, where a physician, I don't know if she's a Planned Parenthood physician or not, sent a pill in a mother gave unwillingly. The mother was willing, but the child wasn't, and took the pill and had an abortion in it just in advance of a reveal party. The daughter wanted the baby, the mother didn't. And the way abortion is being done, there's no pretense this is medicine. And maybe Planned Parenthood isn't as needed in that world, which is a tragic commentary.
Well, I hope that, as you point out in your piece, which, by the way, folks, you can see at tonyperkins.com, we've got a link there for it, is that this would be the time for Doge under the Trump administration to say, you know what, this is not something we need to be funding anymore.
Well, no, sir. It's a perfect storm. The country has a 1.6 child per family birth rate. Birth rates are collapsing around the planet. And of course, we don't have families for the sake of the government or the economy. The family has its own intrinsic value. So I'm wary of that. But the truth is, we have massive deficits. We're declining in the number of people we have. We're aborting 1 million babies a year. And the government has really no reason to spend on an entity that has
Right.
medical practices like this. It's a tragedy.
This is the time to pull the plug on that. Chuck Donovan, always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.